Hi, so today I'm going to continue the last class, which I stopped here. Cellular organization, that is the general structures move along a line from cell to tissue to organ to being, which gives us the word that is organism, a living thing and with an organ system or with organ systems. So here you can see clearly cell forms tissues, tissues forms organ, organs forms organism, and then some different kinds of organisms, prokaryotes or eukaryotes. Now, so as I mentioned, next class will be on levels of organization for the living things. And the ground zero, the smallest level is atom, which I have shown here, but I will continue with this. So level, there are 12 levels of organization of life. For example, atom, molecule, organelle, cell, tissue, organs, organ system, organism, population, community, ecosystem, biosphere. So level of organization of life. Living things are highly organized and structured, as I have mentioned in the previous lecture, that it is highly organized, following a hierarchy on a scale from small to large. The atom is the smallest and the most fundamental unit of any matter. It consists of a nucleus surrounded by electrons. Atoms form molecules, and a molecule is a chemical structure consisting of at least two atoms held together by a chemical bond or by chemical bonds. Many molecules that are biologically important are macromolecules, large molecules that are typically formed by combining smaller units called monomers. An example of a macromolecule is DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acid. It contains the instructions for the functioning of the organism that contains it. And here you can see this is representing the atom with electrons, protons, and neutrons. And then here it is level of organization. And this atom forms the molecule, for example, ATGC, that is adenine, guanine, and cytosine. And it could be some different things. One more thing, that is uracil if it is RNA. So in DNA, this is ATGC, adenine, guanine, cytosine. And these molecules looks like this in chemical form. For example, here you can see thymine. It has H3C group, where there is one carbon, three hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. So you can see the atoms are present in these molecules, and these molecules together with forms DNA in combination. So this is the best representation for how the molecules are formed, and fundamental unit is atom for the molecules. And these molecules, for example, we started from atom, that is here this is atom. Then atoms form molecule, the molecule forms organelle, and then organelle goes to cell, it forms cell, and cells form tissues, similar cells. Then tissues forms organs, and then it comes organ system. Then organ system forms an organism, and the organisms form population, population forms community, and community forms ecosystem, ecosystem forms biosphere. So this is the level of organization of life. Now, if you want to see atom here, a basic unit of matter that consists of a dense central nucleus surrounded by a cloud of negatively charged electrons. Molecule, for example, as I said, a phospholipid composed of many atoms. For example, glucose is one of the molecules which is present in our life. Organelles, structures that perform functions within a cell. Highlighted in blue are a Golgi apparatus, one of the organelle, and a nucleus. Then cells. These organelles form cells. For example, here it is human blood cells. Then cells form tissues, human skin tissues. Then tissues forms organs and organ system, which you can see here clearly. And these organ systems forms organisms, organism forms population, population forms communities, and then they together form ecosystem. Ecosystem forms the biosphere that encompasses all the ecosystem on the earth. So now if you go in terms of definition, living things are highly organized and structured, as I mentioned on the previous slides. And then atom is the smallest. These are the things which you need to remember. It consists of a nucleus surrounded by electrons. Atoms form molecules. A molecule is a chemical structure consisting of at least two atoms held together by a chemical bond. Many molecules that are biologically important are macromolecules, large molecules that are typically formed by combining smaller units called monomers. And this DNA is one of the examples. Now, we are coming to the definition, some other definitions. Some cells contain aggregates of macromolecules surrounded by membranes, and these are called organelles. Organelles are small structures that exist within cells and perform specialized functions. All the living things are made up of cells. Now, the cell itself is the smallest fundamental unit of structure and function of a living organism. So this requirement is why viruses are not considered as living. They are not made up of cells. To make new viruses, they have to invade and hijack a living cell. Only then can they obtain the materials they need to reproduce. And the same thing I have mentioned in the earlier class, that viruses are an exception of the definition. So some organisms consist of a single cell that is called unicellular, and the others are made up of multiple cells called a multicellular organism. Cells are classified as prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes are single cell organisms that lack organelles surrounded by a membrane and do not have nuclei surrounded by nuclear membranes. In contrast, the cells of eukaryotes do have these things. For example, membrane-bound organelles and nuclei. Now you can see in a graphical presentation difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. For example, here, this is prokaryotic cell and this is eukaryotic cell. Prokaryotic cells are much different. And if you want to know in terms of wordings, then we have this Venn diagram. So in common, what they have, both pro and eukaryotes may contain DNA, contain ribosomes, have cell membranes, contain cytoplasm. What they prokaryotes have exclusively, that is simple structure, no prominent nucleus, small size, cell wall as the peptidoglycan. Small ribosomes, unicellular, no organelles, examples, bacteria and archaea. Eukaryotes are complex structures, prominent nucleus, large size, cell wall as chitin or cellulose, large ribosomes, unicellular or multicellular, membrane-bound organelles. Examples are human, plant, fungi, and protists. Now, in most multicellular organisms, cells combine to make tissues, which are groups. These are just definition of similar cells carrying out the same function. Organs are collection of tissues grouped together based on a common function. And organs are present not only in animals but also in plants. An organ system is a higher level of organization that consists of functionally related organs. For example, vertebrates. Animals have many organ systems such as circulatory system that transports blood throughout the body and to and from the lungs. It includes organs such as heart and blood vessels. Organisms are the individual living entities. For example, each tree in a forest is an organism. Single-cell prokaryotes and single-cell eukaryotes are also considered as organisms and are typically referred to as microorganisms or microbes. Now, from an atom to the entire earth, biology examines all the aspects of life. All the individuals of a species living within a specific area are collectively called a population. And this type of topic comes under ecosystem study. So, for example, a forest may include many pine trees. All these pine trees represent the population of white pine trees in this forest. Different populations may live in the same specific area. For example, forest with the pine trees includes populations of flowering plants, insects, microbial populations. A community is the set of populations inhabiting a particular area. For instance, all the trees, flowers, insects, and other populations in a forest form the forest community. The forest itself is an ecosystem. An ecosystem consists of all the living things in a particular area, together with the abiotic or non-living parts of the environment, such as nitrogen in the soil or rainwater. At the highest level of organization, biosphere is the collection of all the ecosystems, and it represents the zones of the life on Earth. It includes land, water, and portions of the atmosphere. Now, diversity of life. From here, it comes to the classification. The science of biology is a very broad and in a scope because there is a tremendous diversity of life on Earth. The source of diversity is evolution, the process of gradual change during which new species arise from older species. Evolutionary biologists study the evolution of living things in everything from the microscopic world to ecosystems. In the 18th century, Carl Linnaeus first proposed the classification of the organisms that is called hierarchical taxonomy. In this system, species that are most similar to each other are put together within a grouping known as genus. Furthermore, a similar genera, the plural form of genus, are put together within a family. This grouping continues until all the organisms are collected together in groups at the highest level. The current taxonomy system now has 8 levels in the hierarchy from lowest to highest. They are phylum, genus, species, family, order, class, kingdom, domain. Thus, species are grouped within genera are grouped within families, families are grouped within orders, and so on, which you can see clearly in this figure here. So, now coming to other things. The highest level domain is relatively new addition to the system. Now, recognize the sciences, 3 domains of life: eukarya, archaea, and bacteria. The domain eukarya contains organisms that have cells with nuclei. It includes the kingdoms of fungi, plants, animals, and several kingdoms of protists. Archaea are the single-celled organisms without nuclei, include many extremophiles that live in harsh environments like hot springs. The bacteria are another quite different group of single-celled organisms without nuclei. Both archaea and bacteria are prokaryotes, in an informal name for cells without nuclei. The recognition in the 1990s that certain bacteria, now known as archaea, were as different genetically and biochemically from other bacterial cells as they were from eukaryotes, motivated the recommendation to divide life into 3 domains. The dramatic change in our knowledge of the tree of life demonstrates that the classifications are not permanent and may change when new information is added. So, here you can see some kind of phylogenetic trees. A phylogenetic tree is a diagram showing the evolutionary relationship among biological species based on similarities and differences in genetic or physical traits or both. A phylogenetic tree is composed of branch points, nodes, and branches. The internal nodes represents ancestors and are points in evolution when based on scientific evidence. An ancestor is thought to have diverged to form 2 new species. The length of each branch can be considered as estimates of relative time. In the past, biologists grouped living organisms into 5 kingdoms: animal, plant, fungi, protist, bacteria. And this is the most accepted division or classification of organism. And thus you can see here the phylogenetic tree. Now, the branches of biological study, this is like just to redefine, which I have introduced earlier. So there are several branches of biology. Biologists may pursue one of those disciplines and work in a more focused way. For instance, molecular biology studies biological processes at molecular level, including interactions among molecules such as DNA, RNA, protein, and so on. Microbiology studies the structure and function of microorganisms. It is quite a broad branch, and depending on the subject of study, there are also microbial physiologists, ecologists, and geneticists, and among others. Another field of biology is neurobiology, which studies nervous system, and it is considered as a main branch of biology. It is also recognized as interdisciplinary field of study known as neuroscience. Because of its interdisciplinary nature, this subdisciplinary studies different functions of nervous system using molecular, cellular, developmental, medical, and computational approaches. Now it comes like paleontology, which studies the fossils, fuels, something like this. Geology, botany, as you know, that to study animals and plants. So there are a number of branches which I have somehow introduced earlier. And now the next part, the classes will be something other, that is biological processes or the processes of science. So here you will be able to learn identifying the shared characteristics of natural science, understand the process of scientific inquiry, compare inductive reasoning with deductive reasoning, and then describe the goals of basic science and applied science. So thank you very much.